No live guest can be interviewed sanely for long under conditions of absolute reality. Even Christina Henry and Marcus Kliewer are supposed to be sane, to dream. Fearmongers, not sane, stood by itself against the podcasts, holding darkness within. It had kept chugging along for 3 years and might continue for 3 more. Within, headphones held upright, mics met neatly. Zoom webinars were firm, and office doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the digital airwaves and social media of fearmongers. And whatever interviewed there, interviewed alone. And I am your host, Clay McLeod Chapman, and oh my golly, do we have a doozies for you tonight? We have some of the best books that I have read this year. I know I say that every month, but it's amazing how we still keep getting phenomenal guests to agree to let me interview them on this amazing show. But tonight we have none other than the author of The Place Where They Buried Your Heart, Christina Henry. Hello, Christina. How are you doing?
Okay, how are you?
I'm alive, and that is more than enough for right now, but I'm really excited and I can't wait to talk about your amazing new book. If you haven't read We Used to Live Here at this point, what the hell is your problem? Marcus Kliewer is here to talk about this book that I am sure he is sick and tired of chatting about. He wants to talk about new books, but no, he agreed, thankfully, to come chat with us. Marcus, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah? Are you in Canada?
I am up in Vancouver, West Coast here.
Oh my golly. What time is it there?
4 o'clock.
Oh, are
Yeah.
we interrupting? I see daylight, so are we interrupting workflow? Is this,
No, not at all.
no?
No.
What are you normally doing at this point in the day?
Um, I don't know, listening to audiobooks. I usually am winding down about this time anyways. I try to do most of my writing early in the day. So, yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Christina? When's the kind of ideal work time?
Yeah, I'm a morning person. So I'm one of these weirdos who gets up before the sun and I go out and take extremely long walks and then I come back and write until like lunchtime-ish.
When are you doing the extremely long walks in the morning, in the dark, like before the sun rises?
Yes, in the morning in the dark before the sun rises. So for many years I was a marathoner. I had a catastrophic injury 2 years ago, so I haven't been able to run, but I can't give up like the distance. So I get up and I walk like 5 to 8 miles.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Is that and that's where the kind of ruminating and the kind of the gestating on story starts, or is that just the kind of the physical act of moving?
I think I just don't feel right unless I start my day doing something ridiculous. So
Marcus is just listening to podcasts and audiobooks. You're scaling Chicago, the streets of Chicago. Um, that's amazing. I want to shift because I want to kind of get right into it. The reason why I asked the two of you to be partners on tonight's show is because I had the good fortune of reading both of your books. Um, Christina, yours doesn't come out until November 4th, so we're just a week away. Um, I feel as if there's a kind of a wonderful camaraderie between your pieces because they both, in my humble opinion, uh, push the parameters of space, of domestic spaces, what you could consider home, whether it's your home or someone else's home. And I don't know, like I am a personal fan and sucker for haunted houses, and I feel like I'm using that very elastically tonight. So the notion of a haunted house is really kind of getting to this idea of uh, spaces that are home to some, to whoever, and the kind of ways in which your books personally kind of push those parameters, push into kind of like unfamiliar and I feel very, very new territory. That's my thesis for the night, which I would be happy for you to shoot down. Um, but I guess like I will shoot straight out of the gate, and Marcus, I'll ask you up front, like, do you view We Used to Live Here as a kind of a haunted house novel, or is it something else hiding underneath the guise?
I think it's kind of a Schrodinger's cat, as I said before the call. It's kind of it's almost whatever the reader wants it to be in a sense, and it certainly starts out like a traditional haunted house novel, and then kind of unravels into something that might be completely different, or it might actually be exactly what you thought it was the whole time. So there's my way of answering it without actually answering it.
It's gonna
But
be We're gonna be
yeah,
vague talking all night. I feel like it's like,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
maybe it's sort of like this, and maybe it's sort of like that. But Christina, I mean, like, I know we were talking before, but like, I'm curious, like, what in terms of the space within the place where they buried your heart, do you view it as a haunted house, or is it something else?
I mean, I think it's haunted in the sense that um, whenever people live in a space, they leave something behind. Um, but the thing I was trying to get at in the book, and actually I was pretty delighted by your intro because um, Shirley Jackson's novel was a huge influence on this book. And one of the things I was trying to get at was that the house itself is a character with
Mhm.
motivations. The house is a living presence. So, and the idea that even though the house itself can't move, you can't escape it.
Yeah. I'm curious for the both of you, when you first set out, like, we're embarking upon writing these books, these particular stories. Did it start with the actual space? Like, I'm going to write about this this particular house. Like, when did the kind of location of the story kind of integrate itself into the stories that you two wrote?
Marcus, do you wanna?
Yeah, sure. For me, it always started with the beginning. That's not how it always works, but it for We Used to Live Here, it was always that family showing up on the doorstep and, asking if they could take a look around. And then I feel like it just kind of bloomed out of that idea. And uh, I wouldn't say it fell into my lap, but it definitely was one of those stories that came easier than other ones as far as building a world and feeling that sense of isolation and all that kind of stuff. So more of a scenario, and then the house sort of evolved out of that scenario.
Interesting. Um, I can sense that. Like, like, almost like the house itself is kind of scaffolding outwards, like with each, chapter. Christina, how about you? When did it's McIntyre House, right? That's the
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
When did that kind of integrate into the idea of the story?
So, all of my books start either with a phrase that I hear in my head or like an image that I see. And like a completely normal person, I have to write a book to find out what it is. So I saw in my head three boys go into a house and two come out, and one of them was missing an arm. And I said, "Oh, who are those kids?" So I had to write a book so I could find out who they were.
Okay. I wanna unpack that a little bit because I'm curious, like, see, now I'm having this image of you kind of walking for miles, that you've got your morning set. This is your
Mm.
routine. And then is it that you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you see a house and you're like, are you imagining kids walking into that house? Like, is this a house that like actually exists? Is it something that you've passed, or did it just completely come whole cloth out of your imagination?
Yeah, it's not a house that exists. And one of the things that's significant about the house in the book is that it doesn't look like the architecture of the rest of the neighborhood. And Chicago neighborhoods have very specific architecture. You can go from like neighborhood to neighborhood and be like, okay, well, here there are like Greystone two flats, and here there are Chicago bungalows. Like like you just see rows of streets that have the same type of housing.
Mhm.
And I always wanted this sense that like this thing here does not belong. You know, this house shouldn't be here.
Yeah. Um, I love that you mentioned Chicago because I do feel like this is it. Chicago itself is a character within the book. Like it does feel like a from an outsider. I am not from Chicago. From this Virginian, I look at this book and I say to myself, "Oh, this feels like a Chicago book. I'm learning about like it. It feels well tread within uh, the city limits. And I know that you live there. Like this is
Mhm.
home. So how important was Chicago to you to be this kind of character within the book?
Yeah, so I've written other books that were set in Chicago, but I think this is the first book that I've set like in the place where I live. So I live in Wrigleyville, which is the area around Wrigley Field. So it's like a sub neighborhood of the official neighborhood Lakeview in Chicago. All the neighborhoods have names and like geographical designations. And I really wanted to write about people who live in cities and put down roots and stay. Because I think there's a sense from people who don't live in large cities that the populations of cities are sort of transitory, that they're like kids who come and live for like a few years in their 20s and then they move to the suburbs to raise their families. And I wanted to write about the kinds of people that live here, people who come and they stay and they put down roots, and then their kids still live in their, in their house when they pass on. That's very common. But I also wanted to write about kind of the changing nature of neighborhoods too, because the real horror in this book is gentrification.
You're refusing to tell me that there's an actual house that looks exactly like the McIntyre house
Yeah,
in
there isn't.
I I I'm believing that someone's going to read this book and be like, I'm going to find that house. I'm going to go to Wrigley Field and see if I can.
They're gonna wander around in vain. They
So
can have a
for
hot dog though.
there you go. There you go.
Hmm.
Um for the uninitiated, I'm curious, like can you kind of explain, can you give us the kind of story behind the story of the place where they buried your heart? What's it about?
So the no, no spoilers because it happens on the first page. But 13-year-old Jessie, she is at home. She's grounded. She's aggravated at her life in general. Her little brother, Paul, who's 8 years old, comes into her room. He's trying to cheer her up. She's 13. She doesn't want to deal with him. She dares him to go into this abandoned house down the street just because she wants to get rid of him for a few hours. And he never comes home. The house eats her brother.
That's amazing. Like just like that. Um, I love that you went there. Like you could have ended it. You're like, and then he never comes back, and nobody
Hmm.
and then you have to read, dear.
Hmm.
No, this house eats this boy.
Yes.
So okay, we're going. We get to go there then. I'm
Yeah.
following your lead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is not a haunted house. This is something else.
Yes.
And and I mean, I want to go on record as saying this is a brutal book. This book is like I was kind of aghast at like how far you went. And I've read a few of your books and I'm like I'm curious like do you feel like this is as far like is this the farthest you've gone in terms of the kind of brutality or violence that's kind of drenching the page?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you read Near the Bone. I think that one's pretty tough.
Okay.
I mean, I've written 19 books, so, you know, every one is a little bit different. And I think there are kind of degrees of violence or whatever that happens within the story. And the story kind of decides that for
Hmm.
you. Um, I just, I don't really think too much about the book in a conscious way when I'm writing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, stuff was just kind of happening.
Um, Go with that flow, the blood
Hmm.
flow.
Yeah.
Um, I this notion of this house that is not of the neighborhood, but it is kind of entrenched in the neighborhood, and what it the kind of gravitational pull that it has on the people within the neighborhood. Um, like, are you? I'm curious. Like, how much is this you kind of like mapping out the kind of the life and biology of said organism, and like, it'd be one thing to kind of like focus on the blueprints. Here the blueprints are mm, potentially organic, like, so like I'm just curious, like, what was the kind of thought process and kind of planning out, mapping out of the house itself.
So I say I don't think consciously about the book, and like I really, really mean it. I just kind of see the space when I'm in it. So the first time I saw the interior of the house was when the characters went into the house.
Wow.
And I didn't see all of the house until those characters went into other rooms because I try to discover the book the way a reader would. So, and I write by hand. So that kind of slows you down a little bit when you're writing. And I think it helps with that process of discovery too, because you're not sort of like in a hurry just to get the words down sometimes the way you are on a computer. Um, So usually I'm just kind of going along and I'm writing and stuff is just kind of happening. It makes the process sound quite magical, but I think it's really just that I leave a lot of it in the back of my brain instead of the front of my brain.
So that process of discovery that you're making while drafting by hand,
Yeah.
is it I'm just kind of wandering down this path. Are you are you consciously, like, I'm choosing the word before I write down the word? Like, am I like, is the sentence there before you put it to paper, or like, is it spirit writing? Like,
It's
how much of this is just like you in a
I mean,
somnamblistic state?
it's not like that so much. I think maybe I'm seeing only a little bit ahead, of where I'm actually writing. So like I'm not seeing the next chapter or even the next scene. But like maybe it's like if I was watching something happening on like in real time and my hand is like on a tape delay,
Mhm.
you know?
Last question I'll ask about the writing of it, but I'm
Mm,
curious, like, what is the difference in terms of revising? If
mm,
your first draft is by hand, and then are you the one transcribing it? Like, you're doing,
yeah.
like, is there any adjustment from the handwritten draft to the transcribed draft? And then is there much, like, I feel like my first drafts are just raw and rough, and it a lot of that probably does have to do with the kind of pace that I'm typing it out. But does writing it by hand afford you more kind of like that first draft is very kind of thought out and methodical, and therefore the revision is less so, or is it just still more work?
I think that probably my rough draft is not that far off, like the average person's first draft. Um, but I also feel, I think, freer to like make a mistake or like not fill in every detail. I'm just trying to get down like what's in my head at the moment. And then every 50 handwritten pages or so, I go and type it into the manuscript, mostly because I'm worried something will happen to the notebook and I will lose the story forever.
Mhm.
Um, and I usually edit as I go.
Okay.
So I'm filling in as I'm typing it up. And it's easier because there's already a skeleton there and you can start like filling it out.
Yeah. Just hearing you say that makes me so terrified of like the Notebook disappearing one day. Like has that ever happened? Like have you been on the
No,
road and like all of a sudden,
no.
oh my God. Okay. Knock on wood.
I didn't
Knock.
mean to give you anxiety.
I'm just thinking for you, my God, that would be terrifying. Where's the Notebook? Where's the Notebook there? Um, One of the aspects that I really love about the book is this idea of everybody says it takes a village to kind of
Mhm.
raise a family, raise children. Um, but I do think that within the scope of this block, this neighborhood, there is a kind of communal experience of everybody coming together, not only to like raise the neighborhood kids or look after the neighborhood kids, but also to kind of protect the world at large, or people kind of on the next block or the next town over. And it it is something genuinely. I feel like it was refreshing to kind of like think of the neighborhood watch as a like a positive kind of like we're all here for each other, and we're all here to kind of like protect each other against this common entity. Um, and I guess I'm curious, like, is that something that came kind of organically to the story, or is that something from kind of like, did you grow up on the block and that kind of you were a part of a community like this?
So I've lived here for 25 years and I raised my son here. And that has been my experience of a neighborhood is that like you get to know your neighborhood, your neighbors, and everybody kind of helps out and looks out for each other. But one of the inciting incidents in the book, not to go into too much detail, is that there are people in the neighborhood who are carrying a lot of guilt because they didn't act sooner when there's an earlier tragedy. We kind of go back in time and find out, and people who feel that maybe they should have done something. So now they feel that they have to stay and kind of look out for the people who don't seem to be aware of the house, because for some reason, not everyone is aware of what the house is or what it can do.
Mhm. Um, there's a again, I'm not gonna go. I promise I'm not gonna go into spoiler territory, but there is a certain kind of sense of gravity, of inevitability, potentially tragedy, of like, things are kind of like pulling us towards an outcome that the characters are resisting. The
Hmm.
characters don't want this to happen. I, as the reader, do not want this to happen. And
Hmm.
yet, I am powerless to do anything. And I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of the characters themselves, as kind of proactive as they can be, are feeling that kind of that pull towards that sense of inevitability. And you said something before the podcast started that I really want to kind of ask you, and maybe allow, like, I'm hoping that you can kind of illuminate it a little bit. But like, there's so much heart to this book. There's like a sense of like pathos, and like, all these characters want to do is the right thing, and it comes from a place of love. And in the most abstract way that you feel you want to answer, like, I guess, like, are you leading us towards this like path organically because that's just the way that you write and this is the way the story is leading you, or how sadistic are you? Like, what is, like, turn left, like go down this other block.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not thinking too much consciously about it when I'm writing, but I do think as I was writing, there was a sense that I ultimately wanted the book to be about love, like
Hmm.
about all kinds of love, and about the way that we care for each other. And the there are all kinds of people in Jess's life. and not all of them are related to her by blood, who are there kind of looking out for her. And as she grows up, she's looking out for them too, because part of her reluctance to leave this neighborhood where this monster house is that ate her brother is that she doesn't want to leave the people she cares about behind.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I am really happy. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that like you're going as far as like it's a monster house. Like
It's Monster House.
you're just letting it all hang out there. Like a more coy author might be like, I don't know what it is. What do you think it is?
I
And
mean,
you're just like, no, it's a monster house.
it's a monster house. I mean, that I think that's obvious from the first page, though. I mean,
Hmm.
almost immediately, because the first scene in the book is the scene where the two surviving boys come running out of the house. Um, you know that this is not a normal house.
Yeah. I mean, there's some weird houses out there. And I do feel like there are those authors who might say, I don't know. Like you know your interpret like not even like your interpretation of it is like but they kind of give it over to the reader and but you're very forthrightly saying like nope, this thing has the munchies and it is devouring children. Like,
Yes.
um and to that I say damn, that is amazing. And I'm like, fair play to you because anyone who picks up this book is in for is in for it. And I loved it because where you start on page 1 versus
Hmm.
where you are on page 100
Yeah.
versus 200 like like um I cannot recommend this book enough. So, yes. Um but you know who is coy? Marcus Kliewer. Do you know who loves to just send his readers into tailspins of like, I don't know what it is. Maybe whatever you think it is. I gotta ask Marcus, at this point, are you aware of the multitude, the sheer number of theories, of fan theories, of reader kind of like the desire to solve the puzzle kind of inherent at the core of We Used to Live Here? Like, do you have like every day, do you get emails or DMs or just people being like, I have an idea, I know what this
Yeah, pretty much. It's been crazy. I think it's something I expected to some extent, but definitely not to the level it's gotten. Like there's an email in the book that you can actually email, and I may or may not have access to it. And sometimes I'll just look at it, and it's just, what the heck, man? What's going on? Blah blah blah. Yeah, like that kind of thing. So yeah,
This
it's
book has
been
been out for
wild.
over a year. Like I just cannot fathom what your year and plot like however many months has been like. Like is it like do you have to step away from this? Like are you walking away from this book at this point? Like it's taken on a life of its own.
I think I will take a break from it. Like um the world I'm not stepping away from because like my next book will take place in the same world, but definitely I think it's good to just kind of take a step back and like not go down the rabbit hole myself. I still keep tabs on Reddit and on theories, and I have friends that'll send me things, but if I just read every single thing, I feel like I'm gonna lose my mind. And yeah, it's fascinating.
So Christina's the sadist, you're the masochist because you're going back, you're writing another book in this world. It's your own damn fault. There's no you have
Yeah.
no one to blame but yourself. The second, and I mean like the day we announced that the three of us were kind of joining to talk about this and we would be talking about We Used to Live Here, people were like DMing me. Your readers were like commenting to me and they were saying like ask him when's the next book, like will the next book, and I'm just like whoa. I that is a level of uh fandom of verve. I don't know what you would even call it. Like there's like an eagerness to return to this world that how does how does it feel to have created a story, a space, a like just a thing that exists in on the bookshelf that has engaged readers beyond the reading of itself? Like that they close the book and these people live there. Maybe they're stuck in the house.
I think like there's an intentionality to wanting the book to exist after people close it. And some of that just comes from just simply not paying off loose threads, just like whatever. So it definitely feels like an incomplete book, and I'm very aware of that. But when I grew up, I'm just kind of mimicking the stuff that grabbed my attention as a kid. And it was always the stuff that didn't. I love stuff like when people explain it like a monster house stuff. I love that kind of stuff so much. And that will live in my head as well. But there's a different type of animal when it comes to something like I don't know, like the Blair Witch Project, or even a movie like Cloverfield, which I think it's kind of a meme now. But when it came out at the time, that was a very kind of groundbreaking. You just had this giant monster come into the city. You never knew where it came from. You never found out where it came from. The main characters don't kill it. They don't know what it is. Like it just feels like very much you're a very small piece in a thing that's much, much bigger than you. And that always fascinated me. And so I think kind of mimicking that style, whether it was a movie or a book I'd read, um, I'm just doing what grabbed my attention, and I'm just kind of mimicking that as best I can and trying to make it somewhat fresh. But yeah.
I swear I'm not calling you out, but I'm curious, like, were there any loose threads or kind of like moments in the book that in hindsight you've said to yourself, "Oh, I have no idea what I was thinking when I wrote that." And readers have kind of glommed on and been like, "Oh, this is like the portal into the next narrative thread." And I can't wait. And you're just like, "Yeah."
Absolutely. Yeah. There are things that there are, I've been ascribed, oh my God, you're a genius for planning this thing. And I'm like, that wasn't even in the back of my mind at all. But people have come up with theories that are much more interesting than the things I've had planned. So I definitely kind of will pivot. And I
Yeah.
think taking a loose world building approach and having not just putting things in for the sake of the image. Sometimes I'll do that and then I'll go back and kind of reverse engineer it. Like there's certain imagery near the end of the book that's just kind of like when I wrote it, it was just vibes. And then I
Mhm.
would go back and try to integrate that. So there is, in my head canon at least, it may never go public. There's at least a deep lore reason for all these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, the levels of genius that have been attributed to me that are completely just, dumb luck. It's all the time. And I
Plausible
think
deniability. Just take it.
absolutely, yeah, I can just be like, well, yeah, of course I planned that. Like even somebody said like, oh, the Faust, that has to do with the Faustian bargain or whatever. And I honestly somehow that literature just had went over my head and I never even knew about the Faustian bargain. And a guy had asked me about it at an event. And he's like, so like, why did you connect this to Faust? And I'm like who? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. To be, it was kind of embarrassing, but yeah, yeah.
I love it. I uh I don't know if anyone I don't know if this person exists, but just for the sake of getting it on public record for us, can you, for the uninitiated, kind of tell us what We Used to Live Here is about?
Yeah, so it's a couple of new homeowners have a strange family show up on their doorstep one night, and the dad claims that he grew up in the house as a kid and he just wants to show his own kids around, and the owner, who's very much a people pleaser to a fault, kind of reluctantly lets them take a quick tour, and things just kind of spiral into madness would be the most accurate term I could think of. Um,
Um, So I wanna pick up on what you kind of mentioned at the very beginning of the show, and that's the idea of like where the story started. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's that it started with the idea of these characters kind of coming to the front door. That like is that the kind of entry point in your mind to the story?
It always started with that exact scene of just somebody at the door answering to a family. The earlier versions, like there's a Reddit version that I had done, and then there was an even earlier Reddit version that I had done before that. And it's kind of evolved from each one. And yeah, it always started with that family at the doorstep. I
That's
think it's
wild.
just a universal experience. Like everybody's either driven past their house that they used to live in or a neighborhood. And so for me, it came from an experience I had very early childhood where we had driven past a house my parents used to own. We didn't ask to go inside or anything, but yeah, the owner of the house thought it was haunted, and I remember that stuck very vividly with me. I think I was around 7 or 8 when it happened, and we then ended up going there a second time, and there was different owners who also brought up the fact that they thought it was haunted unprompted, and yeah.
Wait, so did you live in this house, or was this
No,
before your
so
time?
I believe it was my parents' first house. It was in a town called White Rock, which is like a little idyllic little beach town out here. They filmed a lot of the X-Files in it. And it's just this very small little house on kind of a steep slope and very old house. And I never lived in it, but I just had heard stories about it. And it was the owner who had sort of brought up the fact that he was thought it was haunted. It was the way he had brought it up. There's a moment in the book that's quite similar where somebody there's a reluctance to him bringing it up, and it almost like he doesn't want to talk to it. He's almost more reaching out. It was almost more reaching out to my parents for validation as opposed to like, oh man, this crazy stuff. Like he looked
Oh,
uncomfortable bringing it up, and that really frightened me because as a kid, I'd been around religious people, even ghost stories. Everyone always seemed excited to bring it up, but this guy seemed like genuinely like he had seen some shit. Like I don't believe in ghosts necessarily, but he definitely, I believe that he believed he experienced something, and that was enough to really kind of creep me out as a kid, and it stuck with me,
my
for
God.
3 decades.
And it leads to this story. So, I mean, you're talking two subsequent owners of this house, kind of suggesting it might be haunted. So, what do your parents say? Like, are they like, no, no, or are they like, or do they hide this from you, protect you from?
So in the moment when the guy asked my dad, I remember my dad just saying no, they hadn't noticed anything, and I think there was some kind of protection there because
Yeah,
his two kids and at least 3 kids are in the back seat, and we're all quite young.
yeah.
But later on, he did tell me that he had found basically some kind of shrine under the basement stairs, and he took it out without telling my mom because my parents are both Christian, and so like they're not at all like the people in the book, thank God. But yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, they took out that he took out that shrine and then told my mom after they moved out because it was like their first house and like that's not a good. But yeah, and they've I should really prod them on this, but it's like they're almost reluctant to talk about it, but they've
Yeah.
never said anything like the guy's experiences there.
Yeah. Nobody
But they're
wants to
also
talk about
filtering
this
it through
haunted
their own
house.
worldview, right? So they're gonna have a different worldview with these experiences and all that. But
I I love the idea of like the resistance to like speak of it. Like we really want to talk to each other about it, but we like kind of can't. Like we refuse to. And so it's there, but there's that like odd tension of it. Like, did you guys notice anything? Like, did you have anything? And yeah, if you find a shrine in the basement of your house, it's it'll be because of someone listening to this. So send your letters
yeah,
of complaint to fearmongers. Um, but I want to go back to this idea of the kind of Cloverfield of it all and the kind of found footage of it all. Um, because I do think what your process has been for this specific book is really
intriguing. And forgive me for asking the question that you probably get asked all the time, but there's something to be said about like the iterations of this story or the versions of it that exist either online or in print. And I'm curious of like the kind of accounting or the kind of the revising or the, let's say, evolution of like the story from one permutation to the next to the next. Um, do you mind kind of walking us through those kind of first initial steps and like how it existed in its first form to the next form to its ultimately its final form?
Yeah, so it had started out as it was just a one-part series on the subreddit called No Sleep, where basically, for people who don't know what Reddit is, it's a forum where you just post scary stories. And I think I'd initially just called it Hi, comma, We Used to Live Here, because the titles there are generally more like log lines. Like it's more like you're kind of giving a little taste of what the story is. And then I decided to cut the hi off, and it was much cleaner that way. And um yeah, the first part was just the family shows up and things just kind of immediately turn upside down very quickly. And it's much more, the dog dies. So, a lot of people would be mad at me for that. That's one of the most asked questions. I think if you Google it, does the dog die? And we used to live here. That's kind of like yeah, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so it was
And
a
was that a
very,
short story or not? Like,
it was a
was it?
short, yeah, it was a very short story. I think it was only, I have it on a file somewhere. I deleted the original story. I think it's on a file somewhere, and I think there's like one YouTube narration of it. If people really want to dig, there's some sort of independent YouTuber that did a reading of it. But it was my most popular story at the time, and I'd always wanted to expand on it. And then I ended up getting reached out to by the guy who's my manager now, Scott. I believe you've met Scott, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so him and another producer were kind of like, what are you working on? Like, we want to try kind of like sell one of these things to Netflix. And one of the ideas I pitched them was kind of an expansion of that original one-part short. And it kind of evolved from that into a four part, about a 20,000 word novella that structurally is very similar to how the novel is now. Like it almost follows the same ultimate arc. So I really don't recommend reading it before
Hmm.
reading the novel. It's almost more like an interesting thing to go back and read after to see how it evolved. And
And
then
is
it was
that
taking
out
that.
there? Is that like, does that
So I
exist?
don't know why, but Reddit took down the first part. I think some glitch happened where they thought I was plagiarizing my own book, essentially. So like they took down the first part in a copy strike, and I've like tried to reach out to them to get it put back up and stuff. And like it's just been kind of a tedious process. And I've just kind of abandoned it because I almost just want people to read the book
Yeah,
anyways.
yeah.
So, but I'm sure there must be some people who just uploaded it to YouTube without asking, or
Mhm.
just have some rips of it. So people, and I really encourage people going back to read it, especially if they want to kind of take the same path I did, because I'm proud of it. But there's certainly, um, there's certainly like problems. I mean, there's problems in anything I've written, obviously, but it just feels like, oh yeah, like I think a lot of people could read that and think like, oh, I could do this, like I
Yeah.
could do that. So, um, yeah.
And then from there, does it go to the final kind of fully realized version of it, or
Yeah, so we ended up selling that to the screen rights to the Reddit story to Netflix, and then they were able to, my agents and everything who had kind of gotten at the same time this was all happening, were able to leverage that into a book deal. And then I took that four part and then expanded it again. So it's like a babushka doll of a story kind of getting bigger. And yeah, it's a process. I just did it again with my next book coming out, and I think it's the last time I'm adapting a short I've already written, because it's like I love the discovery of writing. I love sitting down and not knowing what I'm going to do. So when I'm kind of adapting something I've already done, it takes away a lot of that motivation for
yeah,
sure. Um,
yeah. I mean, I'm curious. Like, what is the, kind of going off of what Christina said, like, not knowing too far ahead, Like how far ahead are you in your story? Like, is this mapped out? Is it outlined, or are you winging it in the best kind of way of like I'm in the house, I'm gonna go into this room, and it's gonna be a discovery to not only you the reader but to me the writer. Like how far ahead are you of the story?
It's definitely a story by story basis, but with um both of the short stories, I pretty much had the loose structure in my mind, and then I kind of view it as a free form within that structure. So like it's like I'm allowed to break walls, I'm allowed to destroy things. I don't get too precious about my
Yeah.
outlines. Um, but yeah, like more and more one thing I do a lot of is I have a playlist of songs that they sound like horror movie trailer music, and I will just listen to that over and over and over again and kind of envision my head, if this book was a movie, what would the trailer look like?
Yeah.
And especially with trailers nowadays, they give away the entire story. And like most of my stories, I will have not an outline, but kind of an amorphous shape of like, okay, I know that there's this moment at the beginning. I know there's going to be this one image. Sometimes it's just a creepy image in the middle, and I'm kind of working my way around that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's very different from project to project, but
Interesting.
definitely a blend of all processes.
um I promise I won't go into spoiler territory, but what I actually reread the book for tonight. And it was a very different experience having read it once and kind of making the having the pleasure of the discovery of it, and then kind of returning to it and kind of like being like, oh wow, like seeing the shape of it and seeing the kind of contours of it. But what I really picked up on the second time is the kind of like, and this is you know, a loaded term, but like I'm thinking of like the notion of gaslighting, and that like there are things that are happening to characters within this book that they themselves have no control over, but the patina of like everything's fine, like this is completely normal, and it's like all all the protagonist wants is to course correct and like veer to the left, where this like the other characters or the story itself seems to be kind of veering to the right. And but it's all under the kind of auspice of like, this is fine, it's perfectly normal for us to be in your house, it's perfectly normal for us to be making breakfast, it's perfectly normal. Like, are you okay? Like, is there something wrong with you? And like it you see this kind of happen almost chapter after chapter, where it's just like you know, dig in or put your foot down, but like it's still like it's not, no, 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 like there are no droids here, these aren't the droids you're looking for. Like it just feels very like like there's no control over our own narrative in this book. um and I guess, is there a question here, or am I just mouthing off? I guess I'm curious, like, in like when you're writing this story in its kind of final version, is it more a notion of like, oh, we're going to, oh my god, am I blanking on, is it Alice, is it Liz, who's the protagonist?
Eve.
Eve, sorry.
She does have multiple
She
names,
has
so it's
several
very
names.
easy. Yeah.
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 But like that idea of like, is she, like, when does a character kind of lose control over their own story?
Yeah, I think like as a recovering people pleaser myself, I guess the reaction to a lot of the characters' decisions, I'm not surprised by it, but I guess I'm more interested by it because there's a lot of people that really don't like the character because she makes decisions that are constantly making her situation worse. And for me, as somebody who just that's growing up in a religious environment and not sure if I was religious, not sure where I fit in the world, it is almost like you feel like, is everyone else around me losing the plot, or am I the one losing the plot? And it's a very alienating, uh, otherworldly feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I'm to come to your defense though, like imagine someone coming to your door and being like, "We used to live here. Can we?" I mean, no one's going to do this now because they've read your book, but like, a year ago, someone knocks on your door and asks that question, like, "Can we come in?" Like, I think it would be like you would be hard pressed to be like, no." Like it is interesting how like these like these decisions that she makes as she's making them in real time, they exist in the kind of like, well, I kind of think I might do the same thing too. Not even as just like a people pleaser, but just as like why not? Or like, there's no harm in that. But it is ultimately the wrong choice and makes for an infinitely more spooky story. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's something I was constantly tweaking the dials on, was like, how intrusive do I want this family to be? How normal do I want them to be? Because like very early iterations of the story, from the second you see them, I think the kids were like identical triplets, and like they were
Mhm.
very, prim and proper. They almost looked like 1950s. It was like it was almost you could argue it's creepier in a certain way, but then it's also less creepy because it's like I find when I'm not trying to creep people out is when I creep them out the most.
Yeah.
And so the adding more normality to the family, and then there were earlier versions where Thomas was much more, the father of the family was much more insistent and much more like almost he, I look at like salesmen, like a lot of these techniques that get used on people like me that are like very, oh, I don't want to hurt other people's feelings. Like salesmen will exploit those, for example. Like they'll be like, the classic is like, get them down to one final objection. I read it, listened to about it in a podcast, and it's like, so you say like, oh, if somebody says like, oh, I don't have enough money for it, then you say like, well, what do you know? I can give you 97% off or what. And now if you say no, you're admitting that you just lied about not having enough money, and it becomes like, so I had a much more aggressive version of Thomas in early stories and a much more aggressive version of the family. And I found that the more I dialed that back, the creepier it got to me. That's not going to be creepier to everyone else. Sometimes it's fun to just go full bore and have, things crazy right out of the gate. But I found it's kind of what you're saying. It's like, I don't know, not letting the reader categorize the threat is the thing I always kind of think about, especially in a story like this. The moment you give the reader something to be like, oh, it's an axe murderer, or oh, it's a demon. That in this type of story, at least, it might make it scarier in the sense of like I know what the threat is, but it's never going to be able to exist in that same kind of uncertainty of not knowing how do I deal with this, which for me personally is like, as like a social anxiety introvert person, is almost scarier, is like, I don't know if this person is a villain. I don't know if they are good.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm the one that's wrong. And like yeah, so it's like anxiety core, I don't know, cringe core, something like
Cre-
that.
Creeping them with kindness.
Yes.
Um, I love it. I love it. You never have to talk about this book ever again, Marcus. This was the last interview, the last podcast. You're done. You can talk about new books now. So
Yes.
congratulations. You're free. You're free. Um, guys, I love these books. Like these are two beautiful novels that I think go really well together. Um, I want to ask you both of you, two last questions, and it's been a while since we've had the opportunity to ask them on the show, but occasionally when we have guests on, we close off the night by asking these two, and I'm curious if Christina,
Mhm.
I'll start with you. Um, can you remember one of the first times that you got scared? Whether it was like reading a book, watching a movie, something that happened, like, like whatever you feel like sharing. Like, I'm just curious, like, if you have one of those kind of fundamental, kind of primal moments in your life of when you remember being afraid.
Yeah, I mean, I was a very credulous child. So I believed everything I read, everything I saw in movies. I thought it was real. But I remember, so this is my Gen X origin story, right? Um, I remember watching Nightmare on Elm Street when I was 10. perfectly appropriate age for a child to watch Nightmare on Elm Street. And the first character who gets killed is named Tina, if you remember the movie. And Freddy is running around calling her name, Tina, Tina. And I could not sleep for I don't know how long. I mean, if I woke up in the middle of the night and had to like use the bathroom, I was afraid to get up because my bedroom was down the hall from everybody else's in our house. Like everyone else's bedrooms were sort of like in a clump, but mine was like,
Yeah.
away. So I was afraid that if I got up and went around the corner, he'd be there calling my name, Tina, Tina.
Did any of your friends ever weaponize this fear? Like, was there a sibling or a family member or cousin friend like who'd be like, Tina,
No,
Tina?
so I'm the oldest of my four siblings and I'm the oldest of all my cousins. So no one's allowed to be, to be mean to me because I'm the boss.
Amazing. Marcus, how about you? Do you remember one of the first times you were afraid?
Yeah, it was seeing a black and white image of the alleged Roswell alien bodies. And that I remember I'd watched Lilo and Stitch, and then I'd also seen Mars Attacks far younger than I should have. I was at somebody else's house and they were, I was kind of peeking up behind the couch. And it's a funny movie, but when you're a kid, those skeleton aliens, there's a scene where humanity offers peace and then the aliens just start killing everyone. And that like really, I had a crippling fear of aliens and getting abducted. And for probably like 4 years, like it was like it would be, I would wake up and I would be thinking about it and be like, it's just a very existential feeling. It makes you feel very small. And like at the time I was still religious, so it felt like it didn't fit the idea of these kind of bloated heads and like the little bodies. It didn't feel like something that aligned with my worldview, and it was very scary. So it's stuck with me since then. And I really it's still, aliens still kind of creep me out to this day, like it's a fascinating thing. I definitely want to write a book about it in the future, but
We used to
um
live here three,
yeah,
alien
it was all
autopsy.
aliens.
Last question before we say goodnight. I'm curious, there are those moments that frightened you, but can you remember the first time or one of the first times that you yourself frightened someone else? Like something either that you wrote or or even did? Like was there that moment that you can recall where through your own kind of design, whatever it is, you say to yourself, "Oh, I have something here. Like maybe I got something. Like I can do this either for a living or I want to do that again." Christina?
I don't know if I remember the first time that happened. Um, I was not the kind of kid who liked to prank other people,
Mhm.
so I never did anything like that. I will say a few years ago, so my son is 19 now. He hasn't read like too much of my work, but he's read a few things. And it was just me holding off for a long time saying, well, I don't know if you're ready to read that. Probably he was. I'm his mom and that's my prerogative.
Yeah.
But he read a short story of mine a couple of years ago and he still talks about that story because he was like, that was the freakiest thing I've ever read.
Aw,
So, I mean, I think when it comes from your kid, it really means a lot.
that's so sweet. That's
Mhm.
actually like this very like oh, it's so oh man. I have two sons and they are not allowed to read anything I've written. And
Yeah.
but now I'm like, hey, you want to read this story? They'll be like, we don't like your stuff, Dad. That's amazing, Christina. I love that story. How about you, Marcus? When did you weaponize
um
Reddit?
I think like early stories would just be talking with like some close friends of mine, and I would always have ideas in my head for movies or stories. And there was one story, we were staying at a friend of a friend's. They had this cabin on this lake, and me and my buddy were just kind of bouncing this story back and forth about these hunters that get invited to go on a hunting trip, and then there's this monster. It was basically like a xenomorph rip-off monster thing that I had come up with, and that thing starts killing them all. It was really just kind of 80s camp kind of horror, but you know, we were very young, and I remember we both had trouble sleeping after that story. So yeah, it was my earliest reader, I guess, was that my friend there. But yeah,
Aliens. It's always aliens with you. This
aliens,
is like,
yeah.
this has to be in your future. There has to be
Oh
some
yeah, I
like
got big plans for alien stuff for sure.
amazing. Oh, guys, I can't thank you enough. This has been a lovely hour. I really hope for those of you listening, watching, that you pick up these two books. The Place Where They Buried Your Heart by Christina Henry comes out November 4th, wherever books are sold. If you have not read We Used to Live Here, you can find it on Reddit, you can find it on YouTube, you can find it in hardback, you can find it in paperback. Hopefully, maybe one of these days you'll find it at your local Cineplex, because that's kind of amazing. Or we'll just find it in a dusty basement trunk out somewhere in the Blair Woods.
In a shrine under a
Yeah.
basement.
Oh my God.
With
I
a
am
different ending than from what people remembered.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah.
uh, I am your host, Clyde McFallon. I'm trying to do a what is the effect? The Mandela effect. It's not going to work. But
Right.
guys, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for joining us, Christina and Marcus. I really appreciate you both kind of sharing your stories. And now it's up to you guys listening to buy them and read them because they're very, very amazing. Thank you, everybody. This has been Fearmongers. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
You
Thanks.
too.
Bye.